In April of 1919, a tall, slim, 42-year-old German gentleman with striking features and inquisitive eyes behind his spectacles is traveling south. His thoughts wander to the places and to the people he has just left, to his home, his wife Maria, his 3 children, and to many years of married life.
My eye sadly leaves the German roof, the German frame of the house, the gables. Tomorrow I will love other roofs, other cottages. I am a nomad, not a farmer. I am an adorer of the unfaithful, the changing, the fantastic. I don't care to secure my love to one bare place on this earth. I have wasted half my life trying to live the life of a peasant. I wanted to be something that I was not. I even wanted to be a poet and a middle-class person at the same time. A long time I have castigated myself before gods and laws which were only idols for me. That was what I did wrong, my anguish, my complicity in the world's pain. Finally, I left the haunted house in Bern in which I had lived for almost 7 years. The parting from Bern, by the way, was not difficult. It had become clear that from now on there was morally only one possibility of existence for me: to put my literary work ahead of everything, to live only for it, and no longer take seriously money troubles or any other consideration. She was not very healthy and could barely tolerate company and parties. She preferred to remain on her own with flowers and music and maybe a book, enclosed in a strange silence, waiting for someone to call her up and to let the world pursue its own course. Sometimes she was in such a sensitive state that anything alien hurt her and made her cry. Last year I traveled for 6 months. The year before for 5, which for a father, country dweller and gardener is a lot. And when I came back sick from my last trip, I saw that all this had to stop for a while. However, as soon as I had regained some weight, one day as the golden rays of the sun were shining on the old main road, I reflected on the shortness of human life. Suddenly there was nothing left in my mind but a mad, incurable urge to travel.
In 1919, Hesse was already an acknowledged writer in German-speaking countries. He was only 22 when his first collection of poetry was published. Then, gradually, his prose acquired the explosive energy of a growing self-awareness as he gained freedom from family, social, and religious bonds. His work is that of a man who tries to give meaning to his own existence by writing relentlessly about his most intimate experience.
My birth took place at an early hour of the evening on a warm day in July, and it is the temperature of that hour that I have unconsciously loved and sought throughout my life. I was the child of pious parents, whom I loved tenderly, and would have loved even more tenderly if I had not very early been introduced to the fourth commandment. Unfortunately, the commandments have always had a disastrous effect on me. All I needed was to hear, "Thou shalt," and everything in me rose up, and I became obdurate. As can be imagined, this peculiarity had a far-reaching and unfortunate effect during my school years. School has destroyed a lot in me, and I know few prominent personalities for whom this was not so. At school, I only learned Latin and the art of lying. For more than 4 years, everything that was attempted with me went wrong. No school would keep me. In no course of instruction did I last for long. Then I became a bookseller in order to finally earn my own bread. In 1907, I spent 4 weeks in Monte Verita at Ascona. They were long-haired apostles, lovers of fasting, of raw foods, fruit eaters, and adepts of various diets. They aimed to accomplish a kind of vegetarian Zionism. They wanted to live undisturbed and without having to endure the malice of a cruel world. They all transformed their existence into a fanatical statement of an ideal for which they were ready to endure martyrdom. Any form of vegetarianism was valid, as was any attempt to reform the codes of dress. Nothing was forbidden except meat and alcohol. Eccentric exiles flocked from every part of the world. They brought along only one sin, their hatred for work. Then came the summer of 1914. The so-called time of testing had come, and I cannot say that it found me better prepared, worthier, or superior to anyone else.
Hesse protests against senseless bloodshed and against war-preaching intellectuals. He dedicates his time to prisoners and internees, sending over 500,000 books, novels, essays, textbooks, and dictionaries to POW camps in 3 years. And he founds a small publishing company that distributes works by Stifter, Gottfried Keller, and Thomas Mann. He also edits a weekly paper for German prisoners in France.
We shall never stop repeating the ancient imperative, thou shalt not kill. Yet there's so much killing, not only in the senseless battles, in the senseless shooting of revolutions, or in the senseless capital punishment. We kill every step we take. We kill when we close our eyes in the face of poverty, need, or shame. We kill when we let old-fashioned institutions subsist in society, in the state, in education and religion, feigning to approve them instead of resolutely turning our back on them. One can kill not only the present, but also the future. We need to progress from being beasts to being humans.
The immersion of an Italian-speaking Southern Europe may have inspired Hesse to write the novel Klein and Wagner, published in the following year. Most of the story unfolds on a train journey. The main character presents a dichotomy. Klein, meaning small in German, is the writer's repressed side, and Wagner, the well-loved great musician, expresses the yearning for a different spiritual life. Like Hesse, he flees to Ticino, to a far and exotic environment to find his true self. During the journey, Klein understands he has lost his inner self by making the wrong choices. He had based his existence on the routine formalities of bourgeois life. He had followed the voice of reason and not that of the heart. Man deludes himself when he thinks he is leading his own life, for his soul is irresistibly drawn towards its fate. Finally, through drowning in the lake of Lugano, Klein attains enlightenment.
The one thing you dreaded, letting yourself fall, taking the step into uncertainty, the little step beyond all the securities that existed. And whoever had once surrendered himself one single time, whoever had entrusted himself to fate, was liberated. It was blissful to live. It was blissful to die. No magic ever interrupted the eternal chain of births, the endless succession of God's breath. But there was another kind of peace, to be found within your own self. Its name was, let yourself fall. Do not fight back. Die gladly. Live gladly.
Once his own Klein side had drowned, Hesse starts to live. In the house called Casa Camuzzi in Montagnola, the most productive season of the writer's life, Klingsor's summer begins.
passionate summer of swift-moving life had begun. The hot days, long as they were, flared up and away like burning streamers. The brief, sultry, moonlit nights were followed by brief, sultry, rainy nights. Swift as dreams, crowded with images, the glittering weeks moved feverishly on. Klingsorr stood on the narrow stone balcony of his studio. Below him, dizzyingly precipitate, the old terrace gardens dropped away. A densely shadowed tangle of treetops, palms, cedars, chestnuts, Judas trees, red beech, and eucalyptus intertwined with climbing plants, lianas, wisterias. Above the blackness of the trees, the large glossy leaves of the summer magnolias gleamed pallidly. From the massed leafage, penetrating and rousing, a tartly sweet smell of lemons drifted toward him. From some indefinite distance, languorous music winged its way to him. Perhaps a guitar, perhaps a piano, there was no saying. Starlight flowed through the wooded valley. In the distant lake, mountains and sky flowed together. And so I have lived for the last 12 years in Casa Camuzzi. Garden and house appear in Klingsor's Last Summer and in other of my compositions. Dozens of times I have painted this house and drawn it and probed its complex, whimsical forms. I owned none of it whatever, nor did I have the whole house, but rented only a small apartment of 4 rooms. I was no longer lord of the manor, father of a family with house and children and servants, who calls to his dog and cultivates his garden. I was now a little penniless literary man, a threadbare and rather dubious stranger who lived on milk and rice and macaroni, who wore his old suits till they were threadbare, and in the fall brought home his supper of chestnuts from the forest. But the experiment, which was the point of it, succeeded. It was like waking from a nightmare that had lasted for years. I inhaled freedom, the air, the sun. I had solitude and my work. I have seldom experienced such a summer, so intense, so ardent, so fascinating and radiant that it swept me away, pervading me like a full-bodied wine. I was no longer shipwrecked. Once again, I had pulled myself together.
In this torrid summer of 1919, the sensational encounter between the landscape of Ticino and the poet who hailed from the north takes place. Hesse roams around the villages and the forests of chestnut trees. It was the time when, to quote Klingsorr, 1,000 undrunk glasses were spilled, 1,000 unseen loving looks shattered, 1,000 irrecoverable images extinguished. It was a time of artistic enlightenment, of intuition, and metamorphosis. Color makes an impetuous entry into Hesse's life, and simultaneously the urge to paint.
Suddenly, at the age of 40, I began to paint. Not that I considered myself a painter or intended to become one, but painting is marvelous. It makes one happier and more patient. Afterwards, one does not have black fingers as with writing, but red and blue ones. At this painting, too, many of my friends have taken offense. I don't have much luck that way. Whenever I undertake something very necessary, auspicious, and beautiful, people become cross. They would like one to stay as he is. They don't want one's face to change. But my face will not conform. It insists on changing often. That's a necessity. Another reproach thrown at me seems to me fully justified. People say that I have no sense of reality. The poems I write, as well as the little pictures I paint, do not correspond with reality. I admit that my own life frequently appears to me exactly like a legend. I often see and feel the outer world connected and in harmony with my inner world in a way that I can only call magical.
Vater hat ja in der Zeit nach dem Ersten Weltkrieg zu malen begonnen und für ihn war das sehr wichtig. Ich kann es nicht wörtlich sagen, aber er sagte ja verschiedene Male und hat es in Briefen ausgedrückt, das hätte ihm eigentlich geholfen, überhaupt die schwere Zeit zu überleben, was er gemalt hat. Und ich wurde selber auch Maler, weil ich bei meinem Onkel Amiet war damals. Und so in der Zeit von 1920 bis 1931 habe ich den Vater jedes Jahr mindestens einmal besucht in Montagnola. Und da gingen wir sehr oft miteinander malen, manchmal den ganzen Tag über.
Auf einer Reise ins Engadin hat mein Vater einige Skizzen gemacht. Ich habe dieses Buch übernommen. Und dann ist er vom Engadin aus ins Tessin gefahren. Und im Tessin, das weiß ich wieder aus einem Brief, hat es dauernd geregnet, tagelang, und er hat also hier begonnen mit Selbstporträt. Hat sich gemalt, Hut, Mantel, Stock, Schuhe. Wiederum ein Selbstporträt, noch eines wieder so, ziemlich ähnlich.
Beim Malen hat er eigentlich nie gesprochen und so da war er ganz einfach auf seine Arbeit konzentriert. Und ich erinnere mich gut, also mehrmals natürlich war zum Beispiel war gerade die Schule aus, die Schulkinder kamen heim und natürlich war sofort eine Schar Kinder drumherum und haben dazu geschaut und so, und das hat Vater immer sehr gestört. Und das mochte er gar nicht.
Hesse fluctuated between the need for solitude and the urge to communicate. Between episodes of warmth and moments of dejection. Between merrymaking and visions of death. He makes friends with Emmy Hennings and her companion Hugo Ball, whose biography will unveil the writer to himself. He also meets Ruth Wenger, the young woman who will become his second wife. However, love and friendship cannot save the writer from another period of depression.
For the last year and a half, I've been living like a snail. I have produced nothing aside from the first part of Siddhartha and have begun the second, but left it unfinished. How gladly I would work. Yet, I can't manage it. The slightest task is beyond me.
The typewriter remains untouched until Hesse confronts his problems through a probing analysis with Carl Gustav Jung. Siddhartha, like Hesse himself and like most of the characters in his books, is a seeker, one who is not satisfied with the superficial, but who wants to understand who he is and the meaning of his relationship to the world. Siddhartha strives to live his life to the full. He passes from one experience to the next, does not settle with any teacher, and does not consider any acquisition as final, as he pursues his quest for wholeness. Finally, Siddhartha learns to remain motionless and to listen to the river of life. The whole universe surrenders to a quiet mind.
The unity I venerate above multiplicity is not a boring, gray unity of a cerebral, theoretical kind. It is life itself, full of joy, full of pain, and of laughter. An illustration of it may be found in the dance of the god Shiva, a dance which destroys the world. Unity is yours whenever, regardless of time, space, knowledge, or ignorance, you abandon conventions and decide to belong with love and devotion to all divinities, to all of humanity, to all kind of world. Dear friends, I shall not leave this place. I'll neither go back to Munich nor to Berlin. For the wind of history and fate blows also here in Montagnola.
In the 30s, and up to the end of the Second World War, Montagnola and Hesse's Red House are a stopping place for countless anti-fascist scholars who have been forced to leave Germany for political and racial reasons. The first of them is Heinrich Wiegand, editor of the workers' cultural magazine Kulturweile. Then comes Bertolt Brecht, Kurt Kleber, and Bernhard von Brentano, the writer Stefan Zweig. And Peter Weiss, who like many others also benefits from Hesse's financial support. In his letters and diaries, Thomas Mann mentions the importance of his conversations with Hesse in his new state of exile. As for Hesse, he has already foreseen at the beginning of the 20s the turn of events in politics in Germany. And takes a very clear stand against rising National Socialism. During the war, as usual, Hesse is caught between two lines of fire. He is attacked by the anti-Nazis as well as by the Nazis themselves. Emigrants think it unacceptable that he continues to publish in the Third Reich. Other Germans are furious at the way in which the literary critic Hesse is involved with exiled authors, even Jewish ones, while saving his ironical and sobering comments for the rhetoric of the blood of the fatherland, so greatly celebrated in the Third Reich. During the Third Reich, one man pays dearly for Hesse, who by now has been living in voluntary exile in Montagnola for 20 years. Accused of having published books that are considered misleading by the Nazis, the publisher Peter Surkamp is sent to a concentration camp, where he is beaten so brutally that he dies a few years after the war. At the end of the war, Hesse is one of the few German literary personalities to have retained his integrity. Steppenwolf, Narcissus and Goldman, and Journey to the East have enhanced his role as a spiritual guide. The writer's fame also has consequences in his private life. These pictures, taken by his friend Arthur Stoll, show Hesse in excellent health and free for once from the burden of ever-increasing correspondence. During his life, he personally answered 35,000 letters. game of bowls in one of his beloved grottos at a local inn is a rare moment of relaxation. When the flow of curious visitors who want to see the guru of Montagnola becomes unbearable, a peremptory sign is put up on the gate to Hesse's house.
Ja, diese Anschrift auf dem Haus, bitte keine Besuche, das hat ihm der Böhmer hingemalt beim Gartentor. Und da hat Vater auch oft gesagt, ja, das ist eigentlich schade. Da bekam er einmal einen Brief von seinem Freund Georg Reinhardt in Winterthur. Und der Reinhardt macht eine Zeichnung oben auf dem Briefkopf mit dem Gartentor und dieser Schrift dran, bitte keine Besuche. Und schreibt dem Vater so, ja, er hätte ihn eigentlich besuchen wollen, aber ja, jetzt dann doch bleiben lassen. Und da sagt der Vater ganz traurig zu mir, schau, sind immer die falschen Leute, die das beherzigen und immer die es eigentlich angeht, die beachten es nicht und kommen eben gleichwohl rein.
Er wurde immer gestört, oder?
Ja, es kamen oft auch Besucher rein, die nicht gerade ins Haus kamen. Oder wenn sie schon bei der Haustür läuteten, wurde sie von Nino oder von der Sanna einfach wieder weggeschickt. Aber dann gingen sie so ums Haus rum und spazierten im Garten rum. Und wenn Vater seinen sah im Garten, wurde er jedes Mal wütend. Und einmal habe ich es erlebt, wie er selber dann zur Tür hinausging und den Mann also wirklich mit groben Worten hinausgeschmissen hat.
Every day I get a bundle of letters between 1 and 500 pages, the mere reading of which would tire a man much younger than myself. An endless flow of petitions and problems crowd my room, my eyes, my head, and my heart, and show me a suffering, disoriented, yet also stupid and vulgar humanity.
Er hat öfter gesagt, ja, das ist wirklich eine schwere Last, die auf mir liegt mit den Briefen, aber andererseits war es ihm doch auch ja, irgendwie ein Bedürfnis, die vielen Briefe zu bekommen und auch zu beantworten. Er sagte zu mir auch, ja, manchmal möchte ich gern an meiner Sache etwas schreiben und so, aber die Zeit reicht kaum dazu. Fast den ganzen Tag habe ich eben Briefe zu schreiben.
Warum leistet er nach Ihrer Meinung diese Art Sozialarbeit?
Ja, er fühlte sich einfach, sagt er, als Schriftsteller, wenn man schon einigermaßen bekannt ist als Schriftsteller und so, ist man einfach verpflichtet, sich auch um die Welt zu bekümmern, um die politische Lage und alles und sich dazu zu äußern. Und das hat er sehr, sehr ernst genommen.
Enlightenment cannot come from without. It can't even come from me. You can find it only within yourself, for you will never encounter the teacher who will spare you the effort of seeking. If you listen carefully to your inner voice, you will find a way. I always have to seek it too, day after day. The life of every man leads him towards his own self. It is an attempt to find a way, the trace of a path. No man has ever been entirely himself, yet each one strives to become such, some groping blindly, others in a conscious way. Each one bears within himself, up to the end, the remnants of his own birth, the moods and eggshells of a primeval world. Some never become men, they remain frogs, lizards, ants, yet in each one there is an impulse of nature towards man. We all have common origins. We all come from the same abyss, but each one of us follows his own objective. We can understand one another, but each one can only interpret for himself. When I was a child, I perceived the bizarre shapes of nature and inanimate objects not by observation, but by surrendering into their charm and their implicit language. Cracks in glass, oil stains floating on water, surfacing roots of trees, colored veins in stone. I was enraptured by all of them. Abandoning oneself to irrational, strange, and complex forms of nature leads to a feeling of harmony between our hearts and the will that gave rise to such shapes. We make a simple yet fatal discovery. We realize the extent we ourselves are creators, our souls forever participating in the eternal creation of the world. We always over-confine our personality, yet each one of us consists of the whole world. As our bodies contain the genealogical tree of evolution way back up to the fish, and earlier still, so we keep in our souls everything that humanity has ever experienced. All the gods and devils that have ever existed are within us as possible realities, as desires, and as escape routes.
Ja, ich habe ja nun meine Dissertation über ihn geschrieben und als ich das erste Mal ihn traf, da war das Verhältnis natürlich so wie ein Schüler zu einem großen, verehrten Meister kommt und dieses Gefühl blieb eigentlich in den ganzen Jahren und es war eigentlich immer auch ein Ritual, das wir hatten in Montagnola. Ich berichtete ihm von Frankfurt, von seinem Verlag, von den jungen Schriftstellern. Er erzählte mir von seiner Lektüre und von dem, was er machen musste. In den späteren Jahren war seine Hauptaufgabe ja vorwiegend das Lesen und mögliche Beantworten von Briefen. Diese Briefe waren ja einfach so Kanäle seiner Kommunikation, die er noch hatte. Und eines Tages, nach dem Mittagessen, entschuldigte er sich, stand auf und sagte, er müsse jetzt den Brief eines 18-Jährigen beantworten, der ihn gefragt habe, was ist das Wichtigste im Leben? Und dann fragte mich Hesse, ja, was würden Sie diesem jungen Mann schreiben? Natürlich erstarb in mir überhaupt schon die Möglichkeit des Denkens in dieser Situation. Was sollte ich sagen? Was ist das Wichtigste in einem Menschen? Darauf sagte Hermann Hesse, also, wenn wir es nicht wissen, dann gehen wir doch zu Konfuzius. Und Konfuzius beantwortet die Frage, was ist das Wichtigste, mit dem Satz, Treue zu sich selbst und Güte zu anderen. Und ich muss sagen, ich finde das ein großartiges Lebensprinzip.
I have never lived without religion and could not live a single day without it. But all my life long I have done without a church. This admirable Catholic church is in my eyes only worthy of reverence at a distance. And as soon as I approach, it has a smell like every human institution, a strong smell of blood, power, politics, and loss of individuality. I believe in an indestructible religion that is beyond, within, and above creeds. I do not believe in science. I do not believe in the politics of the present day, and neither in the present way of thinking, believing, enjoying oneself. I do not share a single one of the present day ideals. However, I do not lack faith. I believe in the laws of humanity that are millenary, and I believe that they will survive the disorder of our time. Some time ago, this land had a feel of the Middle Ages, of paradise and southern lakes. Now, Ticino has been invaded and conquered. Tourists flock here like locusts. In the small town of Lugano lives the equivalent of 1/4 of the population of Berlin, 1/3 of Zurich, 1/5 of Stuttgart and Frankfurt. There are 20 people per square meter, and every day many are crushed with no sign of any decrease. Every express train releases new swarms. In a few years, the countryside will be flat as a consequence of the trampling. Tourists find everything splendid and enchanting. They do not notice to what extent, year after year, they are transforming one of the few corners of paradise still left in Europe into a suburb of Berlin. Money, industry, technology, and the spirit of modernism have taken control of this landscape that was charming until a while ago. We, the old friends, connoisseurs, and discoverers of this land, are now included in the troublesome and old-fashioned elements that are either put aside or destroyed. The last one of us will hang himself from the last chestnut tree in Ticino before it is felled to satisfy some real estate contractor. I'm not very worthy as a painter, being just an amateur. However, no one knows, loves and observes the passing of the years, the days and hours, every furrow in the land, the form of the lakeside, the winding paths through the greenery of this great valley. No one perceives them as if he were seeing them for the first time, year after year, holding them in his heart as I do, or loving them as I do. This is the reason why I'm here. This is my contribution to the unfolding story of this small world, this lakeside valley. I'm a painter with the straw hat who, every season, roams and explores these vineyards and the fringes of the forests. I'm the painter who makes children grin behind his back, the one who sometimes envies others with their houses and vegetable gardens, their joys and their worries. We should not seek, but find, not judge, but observe and comprehend, absorb and elaborate what we have taken in. We must feel that our being is in harmony within the whole. Only then will we attain a true relationship with nature. I am not a leader and do not speak to the masses. I always address only the individual and his conscience. To young people, I would like to say, mature and become aware of your responsibilities before attempting to change the world. As more individuals learn how to regard with tranquility and a spirit of criticism the world's great stage, so the dangers of mass stupidity and above all war will be reduced. Here, in the garden of old age, bloom many flowers to whose cultivation we once barely gave a thought. Here blooms the flower of patience, a noble blossom. We become more relaxed, more considerate, and the fewer our demands for participation and action become, the greater grows our ability to contemplate and listen to the life of nature and of our fellow man, to let that life stream past us without criticism and with ever-renewed astonishment at its variety.
Yeah, that's good.
Intellectual knowledge is just paper. Reading in an absent-minded, distracted way is exactly like walking through beautiful countryside with your eyes closed. We should not read in order to forget ourselves and our daily lives, but on the contrary, to take control of it again, with a firm hand, with greater awareness and maturity. The world has decided to stone me to death with prizes, congratulations, telegrams, and 7,000 letters. Obviously, there's not much I can do. However, those who punish me in this way should not expect to be thanked by their victim. Reading fills my day. For me, in my present state of restlessness, it is a kind of opium to which I abandon myself for whole days. It is a task free of material considerations. Countless hours spent in the garden yield 3 or 4 baskets of vegetables. Gardening has a religious quality. Kneeling on the ground, pulling weeds, one celebrates a kind of rite that is continually renewed. Once I have finished clearing 3 or 4 flower beds, the first one is already thick with weeds again.
So hier und da im Gespräch, mehr nur nebenbei, hat er seine Arbeit erwähnt. Also meistens die Arbeit, an der er gerade arbeitet. So hat er mir zum Beispiel mal im Garten, wie wir beim Jätern waren, hat er mir gesagt, weißt du, die meisten Leute schauen das für eine sehr, sehr langweilige Arbeit an. Aber mir ist es gar nicht langweilig. Beim Jätern, da ist ein großer Teil des Glasperlenspiels entstanden. Es ist eine Arbeit, die Hände sind beschäftigt, es braucht aber keine besondere Aufmerksamkeit und somit ist der Geist frei und kann arbeiten. Und zwar kann er so viel besser arbeiten, wenn die Hände mit irgendetwas mehr oder weniger Mechanischem beschäftigt sind, als wenn man einfach so da sitzt und denkt, jetzt sollte etwas gehen.
I have not forgotten your letter. My eyes are strained and have been almost constantly painful for several years. My hands are deformed by arthritis and gout. Only grudgingly and clumsily do they allow me to write or type letter after letter. My eyes would prefer to look at flowers, kittens, or the verses of a poet rather than a letter. My hands would also prefer more pleasant pastimes for themselves. Age and sclerosis are advancing. Sometimes blood does not flow properly up to my brain. However, these problems also have a positive side. You stop hearing many things, and you stop feeling certain shocks and pains. Part of the being that once was called I is all ready where the whole will soon be.
Mein Vater hatte ein ziemlich genau festgelegtes Tagesprogramm. Um 11 Uhr Post. Vorher war Gelegenheit, sei es mal im Garten, sei es irgendeine Arbeit, die er erledigt hat. Vor allem war er im Lauf des Vormittags auch für niemanden persönlich zu sprechen. Höchstens für seine Frau, für keinen Gast oder Besucher. Dann gab es Mittagessen und Kaffee. Das war die Zeit, wo er einen Gast empfing und zu Gesprächen bereit war. Abends war es in der Regel so, dass er nach dem Essen, das man gelesen hat. Er legte sich hin und hörte sehr aufmerksam zu und entweder seine Gattin oder auch einer von den Söhnen hat vorgelesen. Es gab auch in seinem Programm hier und da angestrichen im Radioprogramm ein Konzert, das er hören wollte. Je nachdem, in welche Tageszeit es fiel, konnte der Gast oder Besuch oder Sohn, wer da war, konnte mithören.
One must be reconciled with old age and everything it brings with it. One must say yes to it. Without this yea, without submission to what nature demands of us, the worth and meaning of our days, whether we are old or young, are lost and we betray life. We demand that life should have meaning, but life has precisely the meaning that we wish to bestow on it. Life acquires meaning only through love. The more we are capable of love and dedication, the more our lives will be rich with meaning. Every kind of love and sharing enriches us, while every effort to possess material goods and power deprives us of strength and leaves us poorer. Oh, wisdom is all so simple. It has been expressed and stated so long ago. Why does it belong to us only in part? Why only on good days and not always? He was transformed. This time he had attained the right metamorphosis, the eternal metamorphosis, because what had been half had become whole. He could transform himself from one moment to the next, whenever and however he wanted. A magical current ebbed and flowed in his blood, and he became part of the eternal process of creation that constantly renews itself. He turned into a stag, a fish, a man and a snake, a cloud and a bird. In every form he was both one and a pair. He had within himself the sun and the moon, male and female. He flowed like twin currents through the land. He shone like a double star in the sky.
La signora Hesse mi telefonò la mattina che il marito non era sceso alla colazione ed era molto preoccupata per questo. In quel momento io sapevo che Hesse se n'era andato, perché non aveva più ritrovato quella sintonia che avevamo sempre avuto, si era bruscamente rotta. Mi sono precipitato e sono arrivato in casa Hesse, dove la signora ansiosa mi aspettava. Salì nel suo hortus conclusus, cioè il suo appartamento privato, del quale io solo avevo la chiave, e sono entrato e ho trovato Hesse disteso sul suo letto, sereno, nella rigidità della morte. Nella sua mano sinistra aveva le confessioni di Sant'Agostino, che era rigato da un po' di sangue coagulato che era disceso dalla bocca. E restai lì assorto a vedere questo personaggio che mi era diventato tanto, tanto amico. Sulla scrivania c'era la sua ultima poesia, la terza versione, la versione definitiva prima della morte.
A branch, broken and split, dangling year after year, creaking its song to the wind, with neither leaves nor bark, bare, wan, worn out by a long life and a long death. Its song echoes, cracking and persistent. Stubbornly, it resounds with secret anguish for yet another summer, yet another winter.